Welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Sunday or whenever you're listening to the show. We got a great one for you today. We're going to be talking about the news that happened this week with Rick, like we do every Sunday. And of course, that will be largely about the war with Iran that the U.S. has now gotten itself into. But we're going to be talking about the Clinton testimony, the State of the Union, tariffs, all that stuff. But before we get into it, and as you can see, it's a long episode because we have a lot to talk about. But I just wanted to say, this stuff with Iran and the war right now, this is exactly why people don't like talking about politics, right? I mean, not only is it deeply depressing and discouraging and disorienting and all the D words, but it's just something that is scary and something that, makes people uncomfortable, and it's complicated. And that's exactly why I love this show. No, I'm joking, but that's exactly why I did start this show, which is not only to create a space where we can kind of have some catharsis around it and talk about this, but really to try to just unpack this stuff in a kind of hopefully digestible way. But if you feel, upset and you don't want to hear about this stuff and you just want, I get it, man. It's depressing and it's it's so confusing, all the history and stuff like that. And you saw an hour and 40. Take a breather. I'm not going to judge you. It's terrible stuff. And if you just want, not just to plug the show, but in general, like I did on Wednesday, a 20-minute kind of deep dive on the background and all this stuff. A lot, easier. Me and Rick are a lot more silly than that, and we talk about it all. But I get it. I just wanted to say, I'm right there with you. Not only it's confusing, it's depressing, and if you just feel gross, I'm here. Hopefully this show can make you feel a little bit better. We can understand everything a little bit better, feel a little bit more together as a community at least. But yeah, I just wanted to say that off the top because this is the type of stuff that I think that makes everyone feel sad. And whether you agree or disagree, all the war, hopefully you're not pro-war. Anyways, we're gonna talk about this with Rick. You see, so we'll get to it now. But I just wanted to say that off the top. I'm really happy to have you here. And again, moments are like this is why I even have this show, right? To connect with you guys. And yeah. Anyway, all right, let's get to it. Bye. Alrighty, and we are back with Rick. Rick, what's up, dude?
Hey, not much. Great to be back. Sorry for missing last week. I was moving into a new apartment, but I'm all moved in now. So it's great to be back.
How are you liking the new place?
I love it. Yeah, it's great.
Well, it's very conveniently next to a restaurant that only serves people 70 plus, so you'll be able to dine there like a king.
Yeah, we went there a few months ago, and I would say the average age was 84. That was the average, meaning that half the people in there were older than 84.
I feel like you can tell the demographic of a restaurant based off of if there's a baked potato on the menu. If they're still selling baked potatoes, they're not expecting anyone under the age of 60 to come in.
Yeah, old white people love baked potatoes, don't they?
They love them. No one young eats baked potatoes.
Hang out at Wendy's.
Just with the chili. My grandpa loves that. He had the chili and the baked potato. It's just not something that's caught on for the younger generations.
Right.
And anyways, well, we're glad, we're all happy. Wish Rick well if you're listening to his new apartment or any design tips you have, because we're going to be launching our video next week and I got to get my background ready. But yeah, maybe Lonely Liberal fan art for the back wall.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I've got that poster that my sister Sophie made for me. We need more we need to make Lonely Liberal stuff. We really do.
Yeah, we need some merch.
Yeah, at least something. But anyway, we have a huge story to really talk about, and it happened just over last night and the day before, which is that the U.S. bombed Iran again, but the first time this year. First of the year, but second regime change of the year that they're trying in 9 weeks. I saw a stat that said 22% of Saturdays the U.S. has tried a regime change in another country in 2026. There's only been 9 Saturdays, and 2 out of 9, which is, we're laughing because we have to, but it's a disaster. It's a national embarrassment. This is, again, horrible. I'll go do a brief rundown, and then Rick, I want to hear what you think. The U.S. is calling it Operation Epic Fury. I didn't know Elon was naming these things. And Israel calls it Roaring Lion. So, yeah, they started bombing them like crazy after their nuclear talks failed. Trump really can't make a deal with these guys. And in the fighting, the huge news, other than all the bombing that happened through Iran, all these different defense sites got bombed. But the big deal is that their supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in the strikes. That's like the kingpin of Iran. He's been in charge for a very, very long time, and part of the regime that has made Iran so religious and conservative over the last 40, 50 years. And yeah, Iran retaliated, shot a bunch of missiles all over the U.S. bases in the region. So in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, all over the place. And we're just finding out this morning that at least 3 U.S. soldiers were killed. 5 were seriously wounded. There's so much more to talk about, and I'm going to do a big soliloquy probably. So, Rick, I want to hear what you think before I start monologuing.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised how quickly it happened. He kind of teased it during the State of the Union. He did mention Iran, but it's very aggressive. And yeah, I'm just surprised it kind of escalated this fast into taking out the Supreme Leader versus a more gradual bombing campaign. Why it happened now, I think, is still a question. It kind of seems like Trump is in a rush to do a lot of things in general, and I don't know if that's because of his health or because of the midterms or what.
Epstein, too. I mean, I'm sure a lot of
Epstein,
people...
It seems like he's afraid of losing power, even if that just means Democrats take the House back. It does seem like he's trying to cram in as much as possible right now. I do think it's interesting that this is the second government he's toppled in the past few months since the Epstein bill was passed to release the files.
Yep.
After running as an anti-regime change politician for 10 years.
No more new wars. He's bombed 10 countries in the last year. It's unbelievable.
Right, and that was a line he said against Hillary, Biden, and Harris, was all that they're more likely to enter a war than I am. So once again, the hypocrisy is insane. Trump himself said the campaign is a massive and ongoing operation that could last a week or as long as necessary. It definitely seems like a much larger operation than Venezuela, but I guess we'll just see. But just shocking news. Curious how people on the right, I guess, will react, but we'll see. But yeah, what was your reaction?
I mean, let's just get out of the way that it's illegal. Right? He broke the law by doing this. Once again, it's just getting completely lost time and time again that this is illegal for the president to just unilaterally start a war without congressional approval. I don't know why we're all so numb to this. You know what I mean? That he just does this time and time again. But yeah, it's an illegal war once again. And from some of the reports, now we don't know if it was an Israeli strike or the U.S. strike, but a school was hit in Iran, killing up to maybe 100 children or women, kids and stuff. That's a war crime, all right, and disastrous. Honestly, depressing and unbelievably sad. Whatever you feel about, not you, but the listener, about the Iranian government or what they did to their protesters and all that stuff, all awful. But that doesn't mean a bunch of kids should get shot. And it's exactly the same logic of Gaza, right? You might not like Hamas. You may think Hamas is a terrorist group. I'd agree. Why does a random dude who's a plumber in Palestine have to die? You know what I mean? They're not related. It's devastating, and it's a literal war crime. So that is important to just say off the jump. The other thing that I can't help but feel is just how bad, and I did the Wednesday show about are we about to go to war with Iran? So yes, you know what I mean? But how horrible Trump has handled the negotiations with Iran over the nuclear deal is just needs to be readdressed. He tore up the Iranian nuclear deal in 2018, right? Which capped the enrichment that Iran was able to do to 3 and a change percent. To keep in mind, military-grade uranium is 90% enrichment, and they were at 3. He tore that up, saying he could negotiate a better deal with force, then completely failed, then bombed Iran last summer. We talked about it on the show, saying that he completely obliterated all of their nuclear capabilities, and then 6 months later said they're about to get another nuclear war, killed everyone, and killed their leader. And look, okay, yeah, like, again, I don't love the Iranian leadership at all. I'm not saying they're a good leadership. And it's similar to the way I felt about Maduro. Like, you know, they're different, but same, like I'd say, bad guys, you know, like definitely bad guys who have done horrible things. But it should be said, every single time the U.S. does this, it's a disaster. Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Venezuela now. I mean, there's never any plans. Saddam Hussein was a bad dude. They took him out. What happened? Afghanistan, the Taliban, what happened? Like, Libya, Gaddafi, what happened? Like, it's not like these half-baked regime change type interventions that aren't, like, fully there. And let us not, like, forget, by the way, with Iran, that the reason why they did this was that whole Shah drama originally, which caused all this anti-American hate and the rise of the Khamenei people in generals. You know what I mean? The Ayatollah whole regime only emerged because of U.S. intervention originally. So it's just so stupid. It not only speaks, I think, to Trump's inability to negotiate a deal, which he's completely failed at, hence why he's bombing and can't seem to negotiate. It speaks to how bad his international relations ability is, his diplomatic skills, just understanding of geopolitics is zero, like he has none. And then lastly, and I think this is the one that should resonate the most with our conservative audience, his complete disregard for American lives. Like, he doesn't care about killing people, you know what I mean? Like, one way or the other. And the audacity that this is a dude who claims that, like, he's ended wars and is a peace prize person and blah, blah, blah. Like, I saw this on Instagram, and I want to give credit because I saw a lot of people have made this kind of thing about, you know, comparing Trump's announcement of the Iranian tax to Lord Farquaad in Shrek. I don't know if you saw this.
No.
I'm gonna play this clip because it's just it gives the same energy. But listen to this. It's the same. Is it not the exact same sentence? I'm glad he cares so much about his Lord.
Yeah.
The Lord Farquaad cop.
Some of your children will go off and die. Definitely not my children, but some of your children will.
Definitely not me either when I dodge the draft with bone spurs. But yeah, I mean, and like we said, 3 soldiers have now been killed unneedingly. You know what I mean? Like, and like, it's just, not only was the nuclear deal with Iran originally working, they had never broken it, everything was fine, they weren't originating, they were willing to go back. I want to talk more about the wider context, but like, any thoughts on what I just said? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, obviously we have not learned our lessons from
No.
the other wars you mentioned.
Or 6 weeks ago with Venezuela.
Dick Cheney famously said right before we invaded Iraq that they will welcome us as liberators, the people of the country. Yeah. And that's very much the vibe that Trump is going for. Like, in this State of the Union, Trump mentioned Iran has jailed or killed 2,000 protesters in the past few years. So he's framing this as we're liberating the people of the country. And I am not optimistic about that when we're blowing up schools, that the people are all going to be like, oh, the American saviors are here.
Yep.
Especially, of course, with the history of what you mentioned before the Iranian Revolution that put in this current form of government in 1979 was overthrowing a U.S.-backed government, that the U.S. basically installed the leader there, and that's what this revolution was against. So it's so similar to the lead up to Iraq. Like, all the justifications are basically the same. Like, there's an imminent threat involving a weapon of mass destruction, but don't worry, because once we go in, the people will all celebrate and see us as saviors and liberators of their country. That's not going to happen.
No.
And also, what about the other 100-something countries that don't have a Western democracy. Like, should we overthrow those 100 governments? Like, why don't we just start taking out every leader that's somewhat authoritarian in the entire world? There's obviously worse dictators than the Supreme Leader. There's North Korea, there's Saudi Arabia, which is less of a free country than Iran.
Saudi Arabia is the best example because it's right next door. You know what I mean? Like, and they don't get along, and the U.S. supports Saudi Arabia so strongly. And it's the thing that I think anyone in the Middle East has been very tangibly like, Americans are hypocrites, not America, but like the government and stuff like that. Because like the Wahhabi, like what they do in Saudi Arabia, I mean, they're jailing journalists, what they do to women. I mean, it's like the most conservative Islamic state, basically, other than like the ISIS pseudo state that existed for a few years. Like, it's so conservative. And we have no issue giving them money. And I also like, you know, obviously Iran, they do this every time the U.S. where they shoot rockets at various bases, like, you know, in the UAE and in Qatar and whatnot. And they always, like, all these countries, like, block the missiles, you know what I mean? Like, before they get in. But it's like, what an awful burden that these countries now have to do. Like, they didn't sign up for this. Now that they're, like, getting rockets shot into their country and, like, saving the U.S. bases. It is something, like, weirdly taken for granted that they just do that. When they, like, I mean, imagine if we had, like...
Right, we're not getting bombed in America.
No, it's a bunch of random other Middle Eastern countries. Imagine if, like, yeah, like, if France bombed some country in Africa, so Mexico shot a you know what I mean? Like, so someone shot a missile at us and we defended a base. Like, it's hard to run, like... You know what
right,
I mean? Like,
and, like, imagine living in Abu Dhabi where there were bombs yesterday, in the UAE, and it's like, wouldn't you look around and be like, wait, why do we allow American bases here? Why are we allies with America? They just go around bombing people whenever they want, and then we have to deal with the retribution.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. It's so unfair. Like, it's such a bad deal.
I also think we should talk about the Israel part too.
Yeah,
because
100%.
Because there's a lot of things, especially in the past year, where people say, like, it's all about the AIPAC money, Israel controls the United States, blah, blah, blah. Like, some of that's exaggerated, some of that's true. But, like, in this instance, obviously it's a joint effort by the U.S. and Israel. It's not like they're hiding anything. But, like, Iran really was Israel's number one enemy. And that's saying something because Israel has, like, 200 enemies.
Yeah.
Like, the majority of countries on the planet are somewhat or very hostile towards Israel for good reason.
Especially nowadays. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, like, Iran's always been the biggest one because of all of Israel's most hostile enemies, they have the most powerful military, and they famously have said, we don't want Israel to exist repeatedly.
Yeah.
So,
we'll
like,
make it a sea of flames.
Right. Netanyahu has always held up Iran as, like, enemy number one. They're the ones we need to watch out for. We're still going to bomb all these other Middle Eastern countries in the meantime, but eventually we'll have to get to Iran. And, like, what I mentioned originally about the timing of everything, this just seems like Netanyahu was able to convince Trump this needs to happen now because Netanyahu knows he's not going to have a leader that's as friendly to him in Israel ever again, honestly. Like, Trump is such a lapdog for Israel and seemingly just does whatever the Israeli government wants him to do. And I think that was realizing, like, it's now or never. Like, Trump has probably more power right now than he'll ever have, hopefully. Knock on wood. But, like, hopefully his power is at his peak right now. And I think Netanyahu just recognized that and was like, if we're going to overthrow the Iranian government, which we've wanted to do since 1979.
Yeah.
And it's been 46 years and we want to do it. Like, it's now or never because we need the US's, we need American cooperation. We can't do it without them or else the rest of the world in the Middle East will unite and invade Israel and blah, blah, blah. And so, like, they knew they needed American cooperation. And I just feel like Netanyahu was able to convince Trump, probably through compliments about his wealth and gold,
And beautiful daughter.
Right.
Probably
Was
complimented.
able to convince Trump that this is a thing that needs to be done now. So the Israel part is huge, and it's just interesting because you have a lot of people in the right-wing media world online that have really turned on Israel, but are still supporting Trump, who is willing to do literally whatever Israel wants, to the point of sending U.S. military into other countries and overthrowing their government. So it's another part of the hypocrisy that, like, is kind of hard to understand. If there was ever something Trump did, if there was ever an instance of Trump doing Israel's bidding, this is the peak. Trump took out their number one enemy.
Yep. And that comboed with the attacks in the planning of the new Gaza thing, and and putting Netanyahu on the board of peace, even though he was the one who killed all of them. Yeah, 100%. And it also should be mentioned too, like that Witkoff and Kushner, who are the board of peace, Israel embassy, were the people negotiating the deal with Iran. Like the people who failed to negotiate were Witkoff and Kushner, who seemingly are heavily involved in the entire every action of the Middle East, are kind of running the country, but they're run by Netanyahu, to your point. And yeah, I think it's such a good topic, and it's also it's maybe the most upsetting, I think, because one, I just simply do not understand why the U.S. is so comfortable being puppeted by Israel in so many ways. I get why the U.S. cares about its alliance with Israel. I understand why it would support Israel, especially in the context of the last 100 years, obviously. But, why are we so comfortable just doing their bidding for very little benefit of our own? I don't really get it. And yeah, I mean, so Netanyahu's visited Trump 7 times this first year, which is more than any other world leader by a big margin. And he was in Washington just a few weeks ago, to talk more about this stuff, So it's not even a conspiracy to say what you're saying. It's just true. You know what I mean? I think what you're saying is just the case. I don't think that's really. And I think, yeah, I mean, I wonder why. I really wonder why. And you could say, oh, AIPAC funding and stuff like that. And AIPAC is a big lobby and is obviously heavily influential, but they're not the biggest lobby, the crypto lobby's bigger, oil, pharma, all that, you know what I mean? These companies have more influence. Yet it does seem like AIPAC seems to have a very outsized influence given the amount of actual money that they give. And it's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Not only it makes it hard, I think, the whole thing of who's the good guys and who's the bad guys has always been relative. You know what I mean? Because that stuff just depends on perspective. I do think it's hard to understand that even further nowadays with just the amount of influence. But do you have any thoughts on this? Because it's not even just obviously Trump way more so, but Biden was the same way. You could argue even Obama was the same way. You know what I mean? It does feel like they have a very big grip on American intervention actions, and I just don't really get it.
I think, yeah, I think like you said, there are bigger lobbyists. Whenever people make comments, the pun, it's all about the Benjamins, which is a clever pun, by the way.
Yeah.
But,
it's all about the BBs.
But those types of comments really do overstate the amount of money when you're comparing it to the oil lobby. Like you said, oil and pharma and health insurance and all those people. I mean, they have tens of thousands of lobbyists whose full-time jobs are to effectively bribe our politicians towards their policies. Like AIPAC is not as powerful as those guys. They're strong, but they're not as powerful. I think before Trump, I think the United States has been broadly neoconservative since Reagan, right? And that includes Democrats. That includes Clinton and Obama and Biden. In terms, obviously they were not as neoconservative as Cheney, but they are in just the general idea of the United States has a role in shaping the governments around the world. And if there's any distant threat to the United States, it's okay for us to take preemptive action against these countries. It's justified because of the imminent future threat, like that basic idea, which is obviously questionable. But like, it does seem like the two parties largely have agreed on that since forever, really since World War II. Since like, since isolationism kind of became like a fringe view in the country after World War II. Like, I think that general argument of Israel's our strongest ally in an area where we don't have very strong allies, and so dealing with Israel's bullshit and caving to their demands is worth it because of the surveillance and intelligence and bases and all of that. Like, there's that, like, realist, like, neocon, like, military argument, right? And I think that does explain a lot of the this administration. This administration, while Netanyahu has become more and more radical and more aggressive and killing more people than ever the past couple of years, and you see Obama and Biden take a step back with like how loyal they're being, even though they're still too loyal to Israel, but they definitely took a step back. And now Trump has just taken so many steps forward with just literally doing whatever Netanyahu likes. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is more hated around the world than he's ever been, even arguably more hated in his own country than he's ever been too. So I think that's the real question, is like, why is Trump so loyal, more loyal to Israel than any president's ever been at the time when Israel is doing the most outlandish stuff than they have before and is being more aggressive than they have before? And that's a good question. I don't know. Like, I think part of it is Trump likes people that know how to massage his ego and compliment him. And Netanyahu, just like Vladimir Putin, are both much smarter than Trump on just an intelligence basis. And they know what they have to do to get what they want from Trump. So, like, some of it's just a personality thing. Some of it's Jared Kushner, for whatever reason, has this massive foreign policy role in both of Trump's administrations.
Yeah.
Even though he's a real estate developer who inherited everything from his dad, who Trump pardoned and got out of jail for financial crimes, by the way. But, like, so Jared's obviously very loyal to Netanyahu personally. And then there's the conspiracy theories, right? So there's Jewish money is controlling everything, and it's not as simple as AIPAC, which, like we said, is not, I wouldn't say they're as strong as some of these other lobbies, so in terms of money. So, like, what explains it? There's hidden Jewish money I don't believe this, obviously, I'm Jewish, but like the theory that there's hidden Jewish money everywhere that we don't know about. But then there's the more believable but still unproven conspiracies around Epstein and around Israel, as we know, has some of the most advanced counterintelligence in the world. They've been like that since their founding. Obviously, Maxwell's father, who was a media like a massive media guy in Europe, was found to be, working for Mossad. He mysteriously died from falling off his boat years ago. And then the Epstein-Israel connections, where it's like tough to know how much of that is Epstein was connected to a million powerful people. And that's, the whole difficulty with like figuring out who are Epstein's real friends and who were just people that he met at some charity event that have nothing to do with him or Epstein's crimes. So there's all these theories about Israel having intelligence on Trump and effectively blackmailing him. Now, I think some of that is by people that is by right-wing anti-Semitic people that love Trump, and they're looking for some reason to justify why he's so loyal to Israel. So they're like, oh, they must have something on him. But like at the same time, like Trump's social life was a disaster, right? He's accused of rape. He's accused of raping minors. So, like, the idea that the most advanced counterintelligence country in the world would have dirt on Trump isn't that crazy. So, I know I just went on for a little while, but there are a lot of options. I feel like it's tough to know exactly why.
No, it was super interesting, and I was enjoying listening. It's like, yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's the similar thing to the reason why people say Trump is a Putin puppet. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they must have videos and dirt and stuff like that.
Golden showers.
Yeah, exactly. I think what you just said there is especially like, but he already is a convicted sexual predator, like felonies
Right.
and like. I don't really think it really. I don't think it's that. It's probably money, but
It
I
would
don't
have
know.
to be like, it would have to be a photo or a video of Trump committing a violent crime, in my opinion.
Only that the weirdly enough that the Israeli government has and or the Russian government. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems weird that those would be two, but not our CIA or FBI.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think, because again, like Israel's, Mossad and all this stuff is obviously top notch, and same with, any major country. But like, it's not better than the U.S.'s intelligence. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I feel
and that's
like
why
we
the
would know it.
conspiracy theorists always go, it's all about Epstein connection with Israel. That
Yeah,
Epstein has surveillance video of something that happened at his house with Trump that he then gave to Israeli intelligence.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I think Netanyahu just knows how to, he's just way smarter than Trump and knows how to compliment him in the right way to get what he wants, just like Putin. Like, I think everything we know about Trump and his ego and his narcissism, like, that just seems like the most logical explanation. And then you add on top of the reasons that every previous president has supported Israel, like I said, the national security argument. So you're combining that with they know how to get inside Trump's head, and they did it effectively.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think sometimes it's the simplest answer that is the right one. Trump's an idiot. Netanyahu's a better negotiator. But I think the secret sauce here, and it's what you said, right, is that, and I want to talk about this further on the Democrat side, but I think a big part of it too is that the GOP and the DNC love this. They love this. I think they want an Iranian regime change, and they both want this. I mean, it needs, so like, usually, typically, I mean, this isn't the case always, but typically there's some sort of conflict within the parties or even within one party about like this kind of thing. And like with Venezuela, you can feel the tension between different members of Congress and, like this kind of not wanting to do it or like, more vocal outrage and stuff like that. Or Greenland, right, when they flirted with the Greenland drama. Like you could feel the tension kind of a little bit more in the air. Let's remember here that both Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer were briefed about these Iranian strikes, and both have released a statement saying like, oh, Trump hasn't given a good enough reason for this, yada, yada, yada. But they didn't condemn the strikes, and they both actively support regime change in the region. And it's worth noting that both Ro Khanna and Tom Massey put forth a War Powers Act last week about just basically restating the Constitution that, hey, you can't bomb Iran until we say it's okay. And Democrats pretty much universally didn't support it other than like the classic people. And it's a bad look, I think. Not only is it a bad look because it makes them look weak, but it's a bad look because it makes them look like they're in the pocket of Israel, whether it's true or not, right? The AIPAC influence narrative has a lot of steam right now. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, was the biggest issue in 24 for Democrats, right? How Biden/Kamala handled Gaza, right? I'd say that's the number one issue why people on the left didn't want to support Kamala, right? So you have this, it really doesn't make you feel like they've learned their lesson at all. And I worry that could really hurt them. Also, and this is the thing that I'm really curious about your opinion on, because it's the thing I've been thinking about over the last day, other than just depression. Like, how should a Democratic politician talk about Israel? Because all of my issues with Israel is the government itself, obviously spearheaded by Netanyahu. Right, like the government of Israel, I think, is a disaster and is committing war crimes and genocide, and now, manipulating the United States into doing war crimes and genocide. You know what I mean? Like to do it. So like, I don't like that. You know what I mean? And I hate our government for going along with it, you know? But it's one of those things that like, that doesn't mean that Israel shouldn't exist. But like, people nowadays, especially people on the left, have learned a lot more terminology around like Zionism and being a Zionist and blah, blah. Like these are words that most people didn't even know existed 5 years, you know what I mean? Like, and now have gotten into the literacy of like someone who gets political Instagram information, you know what I mean? Which is a large through social, which is basically all of us, right? So like we've saw that, you know, we see this all the time. So it does feel like something that needs to be like threaded carefully, but it's getting harder and harder. Like, I feel like if someone waffles on this, it'll look like they're shilling for Israel too much, like, because the left is so outraged by anything Israel. And again, increasingly more justified every day, you know what I mean, based off of all this shit. So, like, what do you think what is the is it just outright against Israel? Like, is that the platform a progressive needs now? Like, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's such a landmine issue.
Yeah. I don't have an
Sure.
answer. Yeah. I don't think there's a right answer here. You know what I mean? Like this, because it's like clearly
Right.
people don't know what to do. Like, you know what I mean?
I think what Harris did not do enough is distinguish how different she is from Trump on it. And that allowed people to say there's no difference. And when it comes to Israel policy, when in reality, like, I do not think Harris would have overthrown the Iranian government yesterday. Like,
no.
Or Biden, right? So, like, there was a big difference, as it turns out. But, like, I mean, Bernie, of course, is the best with this because so many family members were killed in the Holocaust that, like, that all those arguments about being pro-Israel no matter what they do due to what happened in the Holocaust, like, those arguments don't work against Bernie, obviously, because of where he's coming from. But I don't know, like, kind of if I was a politician, like, I would just say, like, let's stop giving special status to Israel, right? That doesn't mean we can't be allies with them. We're allies with a ton of countries, in the Middle East included, Saudi Arabia, you know, UAE, those are all allies. But Israel, especially now, is really like a level above any other ally. Like, we wouldn't do this for Britain.
Definitely not
UK.
Canada. Definitely
right.
not
like
Canada. They hate Canada.
Like, if the UK picked a fight with, like, North Korea and said, we want to overthrow North Korea, like, we would just go, okay, we'll go with you, we'll invade North. Like, I don't think so. Like, we shouldn't give Israel status above all of our other. If they're going to be an ally because it makes sense strategically from, like, a military standpoint, like, fine. They shouldn't be a close ally, but they can be an ally. But, like, let's just not. Why are we giving them so much money unconditionally? And that's, like, Bernie's whole thing is, like, if we're going to give Israel any money, it should be conditional based. We should get something back. Like, we should say, you have to stop bombing the Gaza Strip or the West Bank, or else we're not going to give you we're not going to sell you any more weapons. Like, it should be conditional because that's how our relationships work with every single other country. It's only Israel that has a blank check where they're allowed to do whatever they want, and we'll continue giving them intelligence and weapons and billions of dollars, and with just unconditionally. It doesn't matter. We don't care what they do with it. Like, so if I was a politician, that's what I would say is, like, yes, Israel has a right to exist, just like all our other allies do, but, like, I'm not going to give them special status anymore. That puts them on a level above everyone else.
And I think on top of that, like, cutting the funding or to an extent, like, especially the weapons aid, like, until they completely stop committing major problems. You know what I mean? Like, in Gaza, bombing, killing civilians and stuff I mean, like, there's a good argument to be said that they're the number one disruptor in the region. Like, they're the destabilizing force. You know what I mean? Like, which I don't think was true for a very long time. You know what I mean? Like, I think, but I mean, every single conflict now. I mean, they're shooting. You know what I mean? Like it just. They're so in the U.S. in lockstep. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things that like it's so difficult to talk about, but at the same time, like it's now not only a bystander moment, which I think you could say that the U.S. is a bystander during what happened in Gaza under Biden. You know what I mean? Where they were like, stop it. And they're like, no. And they're like, come on. And they're like, no. And they're like, all right. Like, this is now we're an active participant. You know what I mean? Like, we're like actively involved now in a much more hands-on way. And I feel like that really needs a pump the brakes moment. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of like, you really, because you could say, oh, you know, why do you care so much about this when you could care about that and blah, blah, blah. But like now we're actively bombing places. You know what I mean? Like it's a different story. And it's a story that has no plan. I mean, where is Maduro? Is he in New York still? You know what I mean? Like who's running Venezuela? And like who's going to run Iran? You know what I mean? Like what's going to happen? The military's going to take over? You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
What's going to happen?
Right. We should mention that they announced last night or today that for the next few days at least, they're forming a leadership council with the current president of Iran, the current head of the judiciary, and the current head of the council. And then the 88-member assembly of experts is going to determine a new leader. So as of now, it looks like effectively nothing has changed other than the guy at the very top is killed. All these other people that have been loyal to him for 40 years are still running the country. Now, I don't think that's what Israel wants, so I think that they're going to keep... Yeah, they're going to not accept that, which means the U.S. is not going to accept that. But there's clearly no plan. I mean, Netanyahu and Trump yesterday both said Iran, speaking to the Iranian people, said this is your time. Take to the streets and form your democratic government. And it's like, you can't just overthrow a government and then throw it on the citizens. You guys figure it out. Like,
the U.S. does, though. That's what we did in Libya. We did it. I mean, to be fair, right? I mean, Obama got Gaddafi, and they said, all right, figure it out. I mean, like, what happened? And then, like, Syria was the same way. Afghanistan. I mean, Iraq. Look what happened in Iraq. I mean, like, okay. And, like, again, like, there'll be Iranians rightfully cheering in the streets for this. You know what I mean? Khamenei was a monster who killed terrible. The oppression he did was awful. You know what I mean? Like people are going to be celebrating this, just like with Venezuela, where they celebrated Maduro, you know? And more so, frankly, because the reign has been even longer. But, like, and that's great. I get it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm with you. You know, it's awesome that there's now not an oppressive dictator in charge of your country. Like, that's amazing. And it's a disaster what they're doing. Our worry isn't that. It's what is going to happen after. In fact, how do we know it won't get worse? Because usually it does. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
because even, let's just say hypothetically, 80%, I'm totally making up these numbers. Let's say 80% of Iranians are happy that Khamenei is out. They could be split in 2 or 3 or 4 on who the next leader should be, which could result in a civil war.
Look what happened in Syria
and Libya. Right.
Yeah.
Like this idea that, oh, they're all going to come together and agree on the next step. Just that has never happened.
Not only has that never happened, the country is like massively impoverished right now, barely has electricity, has been getting like absolutely slammed with sanctions for the last 50 years. You know what I mean? Like they haven't gotten a break. Their only allies are North Korea, Russia, and China. You know what I mean? Like it's not, and frankly, this is why the U.S. is able to get away with this shit. Like everyone hates Venezuela and Iran, you know, most countries, right? So you're just able to do this. But like, you know, I want to close on the. Oh, I do think it's important to know that Schumer and Jeffries are totally cool with it. It is worth mentioning. Like, I know they're going to go and say this is against the law, and they're right. But like, they won't say we don't like what you did. You know what I mean? Like, they'll just say that they shouldn't have done it in the order that they should. And this is why this podcast exists. Like, if they, you know what I mean? Like, because they don't handle situations like this is why there's so much frustration being a Democrat right now. You know what I mean? They can't handle these things. But this is the last thing I want to say because, there is a few other big pieces of news, but obviously this is the main topic. Netanyahu is a war criminal by the International Court of Justice, right? He's been charged with war crimes. He can't even go to Europe anymore. You know what I mean? Like, or he'll get arrested. If it turns out that it was the U.S. that bombed the school, you know what I mean? Do you think there's a universe where Trump gets charges of war crimes and like can't go to some places in Europe anymore? Like, is that possible? I think that happened to Bush, right?
Yeah, I think so. But it's the U.S. It's all about like what jurisdiction the ICC has and what they're able to do.
Oh, they won't
as
do
far as,
anything.
like, right.
Yeah. But like, will they do it though? Because that's a pretty symbolic. They should, right?
Right. Trump can't go to Belgium ever again or something.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever state agrees, you know what I mean? But like, they really should, right? Like, if it's a fair system.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if they will, though. I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah, anyway. It's crazy. But anyway, we should get to the other story. Do you have anything else you want to add until we go to the next stories?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. I mean, we had to talk about it for most of the show. I mean, there's a massive world war started. You know what I mean? And it completely swallowed massive other news stories, to be honest. I mean, so another big one is the Clintons testified on Epstein this week. And Hillary said she did nothing wrong. Fair enough. Bill Clinton became the first sitting or former president compelled to testify in front of Congress in the last 40 years. So the last one to do it was Gerald Ford in 1983. He testified for 6 hours in a closed-door deposition. In that deposition, he said, I saw nothing. I did nothing wrong. I grew up on domestic abuse. I would never have let him know. But there are pictures of him. He said, denied having sex with the woman photographed with him in the hot tub, saying he didn't know who she was. That seems unlikely, given the photo. I mean, like, I do think it's that fine line of, I do think Clinton is being testified as part of, some sort of, performance piece done by the conservatives. But I also think he's almost certainly lying here. And definitely.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, like, this isn't a good look, I think. But
it's not like there was 300 people in the hot tub. It was him, a woman, and Jeffrey Epstein on Epstein's island.
And it's a photograph of him giving him a blowjob. I mean, what was he? What is they are trying to say? She was just looking at his dick, like just
right,
taking a close look, doing a visual inspection. I mean, like, dude, like, what are we talking about? Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was honestly, like, I do think it's good they did it because it puts more pressure on Trump to do it and have to answer questions about Epstein. So, like, totally. I think it's good that it happened, but, like, it was kind of a big nothing burger in the end. I don't know these women that never did anything wrong, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's not really anything significant to come out of 6 hours.
No, and I also think, though, that, I'm glad he did it. I'm glad they both did it. I think, though, that I don't know. I would hope that if and when a Democrat gets in charge, they continue to investigate them alongside Trump and all the other guys. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because the lack of integrity could be really exposed here. Anyway, some of the things that happened last week while you were on the move, that just briefly, we saw the State of the Union last week, like we talked about. Not last week, this week, early, and
the longest one ever, by the way.
Yeah, and it was horrible. It was the most embarrassing State of the Union of our history, I think. Like, the lying. So the only thing I wanted to talk about with that is the sheer amount of lies. Like, and I want to distinguish the lying between a typical political lie versus a Trump lie. And the way PolitiFact breaks it up, I think, is nice because they have the different buckets, like kind of true, mostly true, true, kind of false, false, pants on fire. You know what I mean? And the percentage of pants on fire, which is something that he says with no basis of reality, you know what I mean? Like there's not even remotely anything. It's like 40%. And like he only told the truth 3% of the time of the claims made, according to PolitiFact. That's crazy. If you want to compare it to Trump, to Biden rather, Biden lied like 15% of the time, like compared to like 85. Like that's a huge difference in amount of lying. And I'm obviously no lie is good, but like you come to expect it with some degree of politicians. Trump, there's so many lies in here that are just so outlandish. From the voter fraud, which is probably the scariest because it has the most real world implications. Also, I think what's so important is like something like this is the thing that just drives me nuts. He's claiming there was $7 trillion of foreign investment in the U.S. last year alone. The U.S. GDP is $30 trillion. So he's trying to say half the GDP was foreign investment in 1 year. Like, and it's just like, where did he even get that number? You know what I mean? Or like saying, oh, there hasn't been a single border crossing since I've become president. Well, the CBP tracks border crossing, and we know that there's thousands a month. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are very provable lies, but they're so far from, like, and like, it's one thing to lie on the news or one thing to lie at a rally or on Truth Social or whatnot. But to lie in Congress like that, like, it's just, the institution is just broke.
Yeah, he makes up numbers, and what's so annoying is his supporters will always say, yeah, but there's some truth to it. And like him, he said that in Minnesota, Somalians have stolen, I think the number was 19 billion. Yeah, $19 billion from the American taxpayer. That he said this in the State of the Union. Prosecutors in his own Justice Department are alleging 200 million.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, like, his own Justice Department, which has to prosecute this case, which means they're going to set that number at the highest possible number that they think they can prove. They're not going to lowball it, obviously. So his own Justice Department prosecutors are like, it's 200 mil max. And then he goes out there and says 19 billion in Minnesota alone. And his supporters would go, yeah, but you know, what matters is he's stopping the fraud. And it's like the extent of these lies are so strong that it's really one of the most, I think, frustrating parts of Trump's just as a whole, both of his terms, and like just talking to his supporters, it's just all you hear is, yeah, all politicians lie. And like what you talked about with the extent of the lying, like that's just too much for people's attention spans these days to explain to people that somebody saying, you know, the GDP has grown 3% when it grew 2% is much different than everything you're saying is 100% made up out of thin air. And like, that's a tough conversation to have, but I've had that conversation with Trump supporters many times, especially during his first term, where I'm like, everything he says is a lie. Is a complete lie. The majority of what he says is a total, and they go, yeah, but other people lie. No, other politicians tell smaller lies and exaggerations, but Trump is 100xing the typical politician's lie. But like, this whole conversation is very difficult to have with your Trump supporting friends because they always go back to all politicians lie. Like, that's
we're gonna get emails
base.
that say that,
right,
and comments, like, for sure, because we have conservatives. Like, I'm sure we're gonna get comments about that. And it's something that I want people to really and I honestly think part of it is allowed to go on because most liberal people know he's lying, but I just don't think they understand the scale of it. And the best example, period, is the voter fraud one, because no one on the left thinks that voter fraud has influenced a U.S. election to a meaningful level. Like, I think every liberal person would say he's full of shit, he's exaggerating it. But like, the fact that the Heritage Foundation, the group that tries its best to make this case, has only found 99 instances as non-citizen voter fraud since 1982.
Yeah,
that's
out of
like
billions.
Billions.
Winning the mega lottery is a higher chance
Yeah, there have been way more Mega Million winners
Right.
in the time. Lightning strikes, whatever. You know what I mean? And it's the thing that when he says voter fraud is rampant and he's not just exaggerating. He's completely creating a fake issue. Like, it's completely fake. You know, like it's not even kind of true. You know what I mean? Like and it's the same with illegal immigrants causing violent crimes and stuff like that. Just nothing even remotely suggesting that that's true. Like the Somali one's a good example. And the sad part is, and what's so frustrating to your point, is that real policy comes out of this. You know, like they stopped giving Medicare fund to Minnesota because they said they're investigating fraud because of the Somali stuff. Like, first of all, these guys got convicted in 2022, like this scandal. Like this all got finished basically, like under Biden, frankly. And so it's not just him lying about whatever, about how much his net worth is or how many businesses he's turned around, like his normal lies. You know what I mean? Like, these are lies that then go ahead to make real policy. I personally lived it with the offshore wind stuff with they're killing the whales, where they just made that up. You know, they just came up with a story and there's nothing that they're not. You know what I mean? And it just became real because he just kept saying it over and over again. And it's the same thing that happened with, and it doesn't matter if he walks it back because we saw it. Tylenol causes autism. Oh, the vaccines don't work. Oh, illegals are causing rampant voter fraud and killing people all throughout the country. They're stealing your jobs, but also are lazy pieces of shit. I mean, oh, the Venezuela is giving us fentanyl, even though that's total fiction. We should be drinking bleach and using UV rays to kill COVID. Like, all of this stuff sounds so stupid, but it has actual stuff comes out of it. So it's not stupid. You know what I mean? Like, it's not stupid when it really causes real life decisions. And the other one, which again is a great example of this, is the trans stuff. And it should be noted that, of course, he spent a significant portion of his hour and a half rambling, attacking trans people again, because it's the biggest gimme he can get in terms of getting his supporters, because they hate trans. Like, trans stuff really riles people up, But again, I think it's one of those things that Democrats don't understand how rare trans athletes are. I mean, Pew did a study in 2024 that went through K through 12 and looked for how many trans women athletes there were in K through 12. They found 6 in the entire country. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 50 states. You know what I mean? You are now more likely to get shot by ICE than compete against a trans.
Right. There's probably 50 million students that fit in that demographic.
100%. We're talking national policy for 10 guys, 10 people, 12 people. You know what I mean? 12 ladies. I mean, it's just, what are we talking about here?
Right. And and you mentioned ICE, are there undocumented immigrants that commit crimes? Of course. We live in a country with 350 million people. Obviously, it's like people, the made-up crime waves in New York City and Boston, when they're some of the safest places statistically in the entire country. It's just, are there crimes being committed in New York City, the biggest city in the country? Yes. Yeah. But there are also 10 million people that live there. And so statistically, but saying, and we've talked about this before, saying that Trump's lies are often based on a shred of truth, which I think is a fair statement, but that's being too generous to the word shred of truth.
Shred is carrying a lot of weight in there.
It's carrying, exactly. When people hear shred of truth, they're like, okay, maybe there's 50 people committing robberies in Boston today, but, Trump said there was 100. That's what people think of when they think shred of truth, not there's been 2 billion votes cast and 90 instances of potential voter fraud.
Yeah,
not
exactly. Not even confirmed. Yeah.
A shred of truth, people think a shred is 10%, 20%. We're talking about 0.0000001%. So even though that's a true statement, that I have personally said before that some of his lies are based on shreds of truth. Like the phrase shred is carrying a lot of water.
And I think it's something that we all need to get better at calling out. You know what I mean? Including me and you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, really, the GDP, 17 trillion. Foreign investment raised the GDP by 50% last year. You know what I mean? When it really did like 0.0000. Like, we all need to be going. And why it's so important, and by far its most important, is with the voter fraud, in my opinion, because this is the thing that he's going to be trying his absolute hardest to convince. I mean, he's clearly been trying to do it with 2020, but this brings us nicely to a report from the Washington Post this week that there's this 17-page draft executive order that's been floating around the White House, which is hilarious that like everyone's like, hey, you see that? Yeah, throw in Iran caused the war. They're just like brainstorming like lies. It's just crazy. But what's funny is, like I said about the offshore wind stuff, I remember when he was signing the offshore wind executive order day one, I knew about the draft order like months before it was public, because offshore wind people and oil and gas people like all were kind of opinionating on it. So this is actually how, you know, maybe this isn't interesting to people, but like these orders do get passed around outside of the White House to an extent. And like, that's so fucking weird. I find that weird. Like, I shouldn't know about a draft executive order of any topic. You know what I mean? Let alone like a multi-billion-dollar industry. But anyway, so this is going around and it's being led by Peter Tickton, who's a Florida attorney. He also represented Tina Peters, the Colorado election clerk, who's serving a 9-year sentence for voting system breach. But basically, what this executive order is going to try to do is say that China interfered with the 2020 election to hurt Trump, which is ridiculous, obviously. And what it'll do is ban mail-in ballots and voting machines. Now, when they asked Trump about it, he said, who told you that? He didn't say, I wouldn't do that or not. He just said, who told you about that? Which is ridiculous. It's also worth noting that 1 in 3 people voted mail-in in 2024. And literally no one just does that. This is obviously wicked, you know, unconstitutional, probably would never make, but it doesn't really matter so much because this is just how authoritarianism is, you know? Like, do people like Kim Jong-un just won an election last night? He did. They had their congrats to Kim. Yeah. So Kim goes on every 5 years. He runs again. You know what I mean? Like they do an election. I don't think people realize Putin gets reelected.
Right.
Netanyahu gets reelected. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like these people, like they don't have real elections. Like but they do have elections. Xi Jinping gets elected. You know, like,
right. They're not all monarchs. They're presidents.
Exactly. All of them are
the prime
Republic.
minister. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Republic of China. Like they technically have People's Republic of Korea. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is what these things are called. Maduro was voted in.
It's just like how people want to think of. It's just, you know, people want to think of these other countries as so much different than the United States. They just want to believe that this stuff could never happen. And so when there's somebody like Putin who's been running the country for 30 years, they tell themselves, oh, that's because Putin is this dictator who viciously just says, if you question my rule, I'll kill you, and doesn't even pretend to be a democratic ruler, which just isn't true. These guys do pretend to be democratic
100%.
rulers, which is why we should be so worried when Trump is saying stuff like this and setting the groundwork to take over elections.
The only thing we have going for us is that he's old. Seriously. Like, it's the only thing. Like, if he was 45, he would go full Putin, for sure. Like, there's no doubt about it. And frankly, the U.S.'s actions in Venezuela and now Iran are on the level of anything happening in Ukraine. I think, like, I don't think they're morally that much different than what happened in Ukraine, and I don't think there's anything different between Russia and the US in terms of like, there is locally, like in terms of like state governments and like local governments and how we're run with our media and like stuff like that and our history and stuff like that. But in terms of like international relations and like our respect for the international community and like sovereignty and human rights and stuff like that, I don't think there's much of a difference, if any, on that level. And so that's terrible. I mean, that's not true. And that wasn't true. You know what I mean? Like for a while. I mean, yeah, it's crazy to me that people don't understand. You know what's always happens, and then you don't even need any stats? Republican presidents cut taxes for the rich, take away benefits for the poor, and bomb the Middle East.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's pretty. I don't need a stat to prove that. That happens every time. Like, can we just talk about that? Like the GOP sucks. The Democrats suck. We bitch about the Democrats on this show. That's like literally the point of this show. You know what I mean? Like, but like sometimes it is worth reminding ourselves that at least at the federal level, the GOP are maniacs and are literally terrible. Like one of the worst political bodies in the entire world, full stop.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Not just bad for the U.S., like bad, period.
And like this leaked 17-page draft executive order, like we also can't be thinking about this in that Trump is going to try to do this in an all or nothing approach. Like if he does any of this, it's a disaster. Let's say he only messes with voting machines, but everything else is the same. Like that's a disaster.
Nightmare. And let's remind ourselves, too, that the SAVE Act, which passed the House is in the Senate now, which is basically just another version of this, but just more legislatively, like this could be used as a negotiation. Oh, well, they didn't do the executive order, but they did say, oh, we should be happy. You know what I mean? That seems like Trump negotiating 101. Do something crazier and then walk it back with something still crazy, but not as crazy. And I also want to give credit to Tom Massey. He and we don't know, politically on a lot of things, but he's been basically the only real leader in the Republican Party that has seen any degree of common sense. I mean, he's showing more common sense about the Iranian stuff than a lot of Democrats are. And I think that, like, he's like a glimmer of hope that, like, you can disagree with someone fundamentally on a huge swath of issues. I mean, my God, he voted for the SAVE Act. He thinks it's good to do the voter ID crap that we don't like. But, like, he's at least operating in good faith. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. Like, he's not a bad guy because he doesn't see the Voter Act ways the same way as I. You know what I mean? Like, and anyway, yeah, so it's funny, he's jumping up my list and like a lot of Democrats are dropping down in some ways with the handling of this. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. And obviously he's been a big part of the Epstein stuff. And that's why Trump has made him like enemy number one within the Republican Party. I mean, he has like the entire MAGA machine against him right now, trying to get him out.
And it's sad because literally all he's saying is pedophiles should go to jail and we should follow the Constitution. These are hot takes in the MAGA machine right now. I wanted to talk a little bit about this in one last way that, like, I think potentially the worst thing Trump will have done as president is the attempts at delegitimizing the American voting process. And I don't think this is an exaggeration that the midterms just not just like being voted Democrat, but just like being trusted and consistent and like no drama, roughly, is like maybe the most important political thing in our lives in terms of like just the stability of the Western world. You know what I mean? Like, if the American democratic is questioned, which is by not believing the election being voted correctly, not like a coup, you know what I mean? Like that's not how it will look. Like, can you ever get that back? Like you can rebuild other things, laws, systems, and stuff like that. Like, can you get trust back in the vote? Like, is that possible?
Probably not, but it's especially not likely when you're going to have J.D. Vance and whatever other
the Goon Squad,
younger MAGA people running for president and pursuing all of these things that Trump is like getting into.
Yeah. It's never going to end. you know? And like, it's just, what do you do when one party refuses to admit that votes are fair when they lose, you know? Like, how is it possible that someone could legitimately think that the election was stolen in 2020 when Trump was in power, but then in 2024 when Biden was in power, it was legitimate because Trump won? Like, how is that possible that someone could really, like, in good faith feel that way?
And why does 40% of the country not care?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. Like, how is that not a deal breaker for anyone? Like, no matter what. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this level of conspiracy theory-ness is the only one that I truly care about. Maybe that one and the medical one, because, like, all this other stuff is policy-based that you can kind of amend over time. You know what I mean? Like, from immigration to guns, all this stuff matters. Climate matters a ton. But, like, there are rules that can fix this. You can't make a law that says, believe our system. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I worry about that a lot. And I just think him saying that at the State of the Union was that might have been the worst part of it, period.
But like when we're thinking, because I like that on this show we talk a lot about like Democratic strategy and like what Democrats and liberals should do moving forward and how we should address all these things, because Democrats need to win more in this era, obviously.
That's number one. Yeah. They need to get better.
Right. And like the Kamala Harris, the whole thing that fascism is coming to America via Trump, like that did not work, right? And so like I'm torn between, like, I agree with you that like this is potentially the worst thing Trump is doing, is completely destroying trust in the democracy and electoral system.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about lasting impacts beyond Trump's life. But at the same time, like, should Democratic leaders be focusing on that or no? Because in 2024, they were warning about that and people did not care. And then you have this, like, in Trump's State of the Union, one of the big headlines was he said, quote, "This is the golden age of America. The roaring economy is roaring like never before, and there is hardly any inflation in the United States."
Ridiculous.
That's so dumb and insane. And I saw a lot of discourse online of some people being like, this should be, the Democratic response should focus on that, right?
Yeah.
It shouldn't focus on Somalians or Iran or Minnesota or trans rights or anything. And then other people being like, that's crazy. How can you not, you know, do all those things? But like, in terms of just convincing independents and Trump voters to vote Democrat next time or not vote, like, maybe they should just focus on these economic lies, because these are exactly the lies that people hated Biden for. Biden said the economy's doing well and people didn't believe that the economy was doing well. And Trump's going so over the top with it. I mean, the roaring economy is roaring like never before. No, it's not. No measure is it roaring.
No. And no one feels that, you know, nobody other than his friends, his billionaire friends. It's never been better for them. They're roaring.
Right.
They roar.
So like, while we have to like talk about all of these things, and I think what ICE is doing is currently the worst thing that Trump has done this term. But like, in terms of election strategy, should Democrats just follow the Zohran Mamdani approach and just be like, affordability is the number one concern people care about and the number one thing that drives voting patterns? And like that clip of Trump saying there's hardly inflation and the economy's better than it's ever been, like, maybe that should be the headline for the midterms.
Great question. I mean, it definitely needs to be up there, right? Like, I mean, it definitely has to be a top. I guess another question, though, a question on your question, answer your question with another question, is it, because I agree with you, right? I think that, like, the kind of economic populist-y AOC, Bernie, Zoran style, that's what I resonate the most with. I think that's a very bipartisan, you know, we're getting screwed by the billionaires and we all feel poor because of it. Wealth inequality is bullshit. You know what I mean? I think that is a great platform that is strong. And yeah, they'll call you a communist. They called Kamala a communist. Who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? Like, I think that. That being said, And this is the thing that I think about when I'm thinking about how the left will approach that. I'm not worried about, centrists or just like making sure your base shows up. You know what I mean? Like, but the thing is, Zoran, Bernie, and AOC aren't hypocrites. You know what I mean? If Gavin Newsom tries to run on that platform, you know what I mean, as president, I'm not even saying he'd be a good president or a bad president. Like, I don't know enough at the moment, you know what I mean, to know how he'll handle it or if he'd be a good candidate. But he's definitely taking money from PACs and billionaires, you know what I mean, like stuff like that. So is that just such a hypocrite? Because the thing with Trump, and this is the thing that I want to write an article about this on our Substack, actually. I was actually thinking about telling you, like, the billionaire populist is a funny paradox that, like, we've never seen before in history, right? Like, and it's funny that because he's so rich, it allows people to believe the lie that he's not influenced by other rich people because they can be like, he's so rich, he's anti-establishment, which isn't true, right? We've seen clearly he's in the pocket of all these guys, but the logic is kind of funny and it kind of works. I can see how someone could think that, you know what I mean? Even though it's so weird. Gavin Newsom can't say that, you know what I mean? Like, he's getting his money because of donations, Chuck Schumer can't say that. Hakeem Jeffries can't say that. Most politicians, period, can't say that. You know what I mean? So Trump is able to play the populist card, I think, because of his extreme wealth, even though that's exactly why he's corrupt. And Bernie can play it, AOC can play it, Zoran can play it, a few others can play it, but it's very limited number of people. So I agree that if you're like Graham Plattner or you're, whatever, populist-y kind of politician, what's her name? Even James Tillerico in Texas or some of these guys, like, yeah, definitely, do that. You know what I mean? But like, I do worry that are they able to detangle their clear bias, enough that, like, will there be, whether it's genuine or not, like legitimate liberal outrage that will get in the way, which it shouldn't, but I'm not saying if it should or shouldn't. I'm just saying, will it or will it not? Like, will Democrats start saying, I'm not going to vote for anyone who takes money from AIPAC? Like, is that going to be a thing that people say on Instagram? Because if so, Hakeem Jeffries wouldn't get votes. Chuck Schumer wouldn't get votes. Gavin Newsom probably won't get votes. You know what I mean? Like, and so what do you do in that case? You know what I mean? So anyways, there's a long, rambly way of answering your question of just saying, like, yes, but I wonder if it'll stick as hard if it's not coming from a Zoran.
Right.
Like, will it actually land? Because it lands when it's real, But if it's not real, can it really land? Or are you just doing the Jeffries song and dance? Which is partly of why we got into this position in the first place. You know what I mean?
Right. And I was hoping that Bernie's success in 2016 and 2020 in the primaries, that was so much more successful than anybody expected, like with no super PAC money. I was hoping that would show Democrats that you can reject all super PAC money and still win elections.
Yeah.
Or at least almost win elections. But that didn't happen.
No, and they actively didn't help out when Zoran was trying. You know what I mean? Like, we talk about that on the show all the time, but like, it's so, I think, illuminating on like their position on that stuff. And I do think Democrats rightfully have pointed that, Citizens United, billionaire, intervention into politics, money in politics in general, is one of the biggest problems. And like, our campaign financing system is busted, and this is leaving corporations with an outsized influence on government, which is part of the reason why capitalism has broken and why we have an oligarch kind of system to play. Like, I think, like, they'll conversationally say that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, dude from Connecticut, he'll say that, right? But then they don't do anything about it. And they'll say, we don't do anything about it because of we can't get bipartisan support. Like, we just can't get the Republican votes. And there is some truth to that, but there's also clearly not some truth to that because there was no bipartisan vote to bomb Iran last night or a bipartisan vote to take Maduro out of his office and put him into somewhere in New York. You know what I mean? So, like, what bipartisan vote? You know what I mean? Like, you could stop it. Yeah. And yeah. So anyways, I think it depends on the candidate, but I think overall, I agree with you. I would like it to be then coupled with a legitimate wave of, primaries from candidates who are actually walking the talk.
Right.
And I much rather them walk the talk on that than any other issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, so that was a really long answer, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, that makes sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the last things I want to talk about, but super interesting and a big part of my new job. So I work, a lot now with the AI energy crap. That's like a new part of my job. And I'm now way more closely following like AI stuff, you know what I mean? And these type of companies and stuff like that. And this week, an interesting thing happened where Anthropic, the AI system that makes Claude, they have had this contract with the Pentagon since last summer to deploy Claude on classified military networks. And it was the only AI approved for classified use. So basically just their internal secret stuff. But they got into a big fight because they said they wanted to be able to use Claude for two things. So Anthropic said, these are the two red lines we won't cave on, right? One was no use in fully autonomous weapons. So basically AI making lethal decisions without human oversight. So the AI chooses to kill someone without a human saying. Or B, no mass domestic surveillance of American citizens. So Anthropic said, we won't agree to these two things. So sorry, you know what I mean? And there was this big fight with Hegseth at the knot. And the Pentagon gave them a deadline on Friday. It's like, you either will change your mind or we won't use you. Anthropic said, we're not changing our mind. So they cut them all. And Trump called them left-wing nut jobs because of this and has directed every federal agency to immediately cease all use of Anthropic's technology. And then, after that, OpenAI took the contract, the ones who make ChatGPT. And I just want people to realize how fucking crazy this is. You know what I mean? Like, those are such, like, are you serious? They want AI killing people without human oversight? Like, this is terrifying. And I am more and more on the side of AI is so good and only getting better. Like, this is, like, there's no universe around it now that, like, it's going to be a big part of work. It's going to take a lot of jobs. Like, this is not happening. Like, AI is incredible. I think a lot of people used AI early on when it kind of popped up a few years ago. It was kind of janky. And then they said, oh, yeah. But I don't think they've realized that it's now become like Einstein level good, basically, in every topic nowadays. And so it's probably the most important topic in terms of regulation and, how it's going to interact with humanity. And the fact that this is how the Trump administration wants AI to operate is terrifying because it can do all this stuff if they let it.
Right.
And another thing to it, I think that the comparison that I hear a lot is between nuclear weapons. Like, it's kind of like the nuclear weapon thing, like where it's just like so bad for society. Do we need to just agree like this needs to call it? The difference is though, when someone has nuclear material, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know if they're running at an AI out of their basement. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the race to the bottom logic's even more terrifying because it's much more secret. It's easy to be sneaky about it. Versus nuclear stuff, you have to enrich uranium and get uranium. Like, there's a whole facilities and processes and stuff like that. So, yeah, man, it's a real bummer that we have this absolute goon squad and probably the most important invention in our lifetime happening. And probably the biggest thing that will change the way the world works since the Industrial Revolution. And we have an absolute doofus squad in charge.
Right. Like, there's no way they understand any of this, especially Trump. I mean, Trump, I don't even know if he knows what AI stands for. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, there's
He's an absolute idiot.
I mean, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, claims that they'll have the same restrictions, the no domestic surveillance thing.
Yeah, Sam Altman also a few weeks ago said, I don't know why people are so worked up about AI water use. You know how many water use it takes to train a human for 20 years? That's a direct quote from Sam Altman. I don't know if I think he values robot to human 1-to-1. Right. He may, who really will do it is XAI, right? Grok. It's going to be Grok for sure. Like, obviously, that's Elon's AI. Grok is already getting it's just not as good as Anthropic or OpenAI's system. You know what I mean? But It doesn't matter. I mean, I don't think it matters. there's a good chance Grok fucking did the Iranian strikes. I actually don't think that's crazy. You're telling me Friday night they go, we're not using Anthropic anymore. They're a liberal wokeness. And then the night later, they're bombing other countries? They definitely used AI. They definitely used Grok, I would guess. Dude, Grok is like making like fake nudes and bombing countries. Like, this is hell.
Yeah, it's insane.
I don't know. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's just all insane. And the scariest part is like we have no insight. Like we have no, like we're taking Sam Altman's word for it that it won't be used for mass surveillance. Like I guess so.
Yeah,
if only we had politicians who could regulate this stuff.
And I think that by 2028, the impacts on the job market will be so well documented by then because, you know, there's going to be mass layoffs and stuff. There's no doubt about it going to happen, in my opinion. Like, that will be the number one platform I think candidates run on. You know what I mean? And I think we've already seen it now. The AI lobbyist budget is the biggest one right now in terms of lobbying for deregulation. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because I use AI and I think it's a big part of the way work will be, and I think everyone should get good at it. You know what I mean? The energy use is a real concern, though. But obviously, yeah, I don't see a universe where this isn't the number one topic. I actually think it's going to be the number one topic in 2028. That would be my hot take. Like, I think, because the difference between this and the Industrial Revolution, I think, is that they didn't realize the sewing machine was taking jobs around the world because no one could talk. But now we'll be like watching it in real time. You know what I mean? Like the layoffs and the moves. So like people are going to be able to like absorb it live. And so I think it'll be just much more discussed, you know, because they haven't even built all the data centers they're planning on building. You know, like this is still limited infrastructure. This is still early days. Like, think about it. 2 years ago, the idea of AI like running the military was pretty unlikely. And now it's like not even questioned that it happens, you know?
Yeah, once the layoffs start really affecting the unemployment rate, which is probably a couple years away, it's going to become a massive thing. Like, obviously, the layoffs are already happening.
But I think in a year, like...
Right, but the unemployment rate's still relatively low. Like, it's not at, like, 2009 recession level. You know what I mean? Like, once the unemployment rate reaches, like, 10 or something, like, it's going to be a catastrophe.
And they'll have to have a plan. Like, that will be, like, what are you going to do? You know, like about this. And it's tough, man, because there is some security. I don't know. This is the thing that freaks me out. Because, like, I'm not worried about election meddling, but I am worried about some punk in his basement, like, you know, bratty teen fucking with an election. I actually think that could happen. Like, that seems believable to me. You know what I mean? Some 4chan user uses AI to cause a huge problem. That is actually very believable. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if they'll ever let. I don't know what that's not up for us to solve. And then really quick, thought it was worth mentioning that the Lancet, which is basically one of the, if not one of the world's most prestigious medical journals, they published an article this week called "Robert F. Kennedy Jr. 1 Year of Failure." And the cover is the line just right on the front of the journal said, "And there is little hope for U.S. health and science while he remains at the helm." I mean, yeah, it's just, no, they're lying, guys. Actually, RFK is telling the truth. You know what I mean? Like, no, dude, they're actually lying.
Right.
Yeah, like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, just... It's too many things are happening to keep track.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we're talking, it's almost 2 hours. We're like, but like, we had to. What are we not going to talk about? The U.S. entering a giant war that like is teetering on the concept of a world war. I mean, they are bombing a lot of countries. I mean, like, it's not so dumb. I wouldn't call it a world war, but like, it's warming up that scale just by the sheer volume of nations that have been now bombed and defending missiles.
Yeah, in any other presidency, RFK would be the number one story in the news every week, and calls for his impeachment or resignation would be like constant. But he's like 5 down.
It's not even Bond. Like, we didn't even talk Bondi or the fact Kristi Noem this week said, you know, faked a story that illegals were eating people in Minnesota. Did you see that? Cannibals. She was claiming there's cannibalism in the illegal immigrant community. They're just total lies. Like, I mean, this didn't even make the list because it's just so crazy. You know what I mean? We didn't even talk about how Trump said he wants a third term again at a rally in Texas, or how he won't endorse any of the Republicans. Like, there's so many news stories to talk about, but like, of course we have to talk about the fact that we're now in a global war for 40
Right.
minutes. Of course we are. I mean, and here's another thing. Like, okay, they polled people about the third term. Gallup did this week. Here, I'm going to ask you a question. Here, let's see if you, I don't know, maybe you already know the answer. What do you think the amount of Americans who disapprove of Trump serving a third term?
Who are against it?
Yeah. Percent against.
So it should obviously be 90+%, because if you believe in a democracy. But I'm going to say 65.
Yep. 65 to 70, depending on error. Yep. 35% of this country is cool, doesn't believe in a democracy, or are willing to break the democracy for Trump, particularly.
Right. For an 80-year-old pedo. That's who they're willing to break democracy for.
A billionaire pedo who's done spent his entire life defrauding and attacking innocent people his entire life. Who's famous for making fun of celebrities. That's his literal claim to fame.
Right.
In fact, the only thing that he's ever had any real success in is making fun of celebrities on The Apprentice. That's actually his only success.
Exactly.
And I just couldn't believe that stat. Yeah, I mean, the Medicaid thing to Minnesota is a big deal. Cuba bombed an American boat. Obviously, there's a lot of conflict around here that, like, I think I think it's very possible by the summertime we're invading Cuba. And that's another one. How many regime changes can we do in 1 year? I mean, my God.
Right.
Do you think, like, and then I want to end the show. We should probably end the show because it's so long. Like, do you think that, like, what do you think is more embarrassing? Right? Like 2003, Afghanistan, like weapons of mass destruction, Iraq, Afghanistan type war stuff, like all that stuff about, like, we have to go in there for the WMD stuff. And even though everyone knew there wasn't and all that stuff. Or right now on an international.
Now, easily right now. I mean, he wants to take over Greenland.
Yeah, I know.
Like his biggest enemy is Canada.
I know.
Right now, 100%.
It's not even
it's
close.
More embarrassing.
Do you think, like, yeah, we didn't even talk about the hockey drama, about how he wanted to invite the guy hockey team and not the girl hockey team, and, Kash Patel in the locker room drinking beers with the boys in Milan. Or, all that drama, like, all that bullshit, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's so humiliating. Yeah, you're probably right. Because, I think the argument against was, like, just the pure casualties were so much higher with Bush. Like, the amount of people who were killed in general. But.
Right, but it also took
20 years.
It also took 03 to 08. I mean,
that's true.
For that death toll to get higher and higher.
Honestly, we haven't even been looking at the news while we've been watching this. There's a good chance there could have been more strikes. You know what I mean? Like, Iran could have retaliated while we were recording this.
Right.
We're doing this early Sunday morning. Anyway, I mean, I think that's it. We didn't even talk about Shia LaBeouf throwing a temper tantrum
next
Mardi
week
Gras.
we got to talk about tariffs and Shia LaBeouf, which is an interesting combination.
Yeah, we got to talk about the Supreme
That's a little
Court.
teaser.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, the tariff drama, that's another one. I can't do it, man. I can't. Last night was the first time I was just like, how are we going to do this show? You know what I mean? Like, just like, this is a nightmare. Like, this is so unfun. Like, it's so awful.
How are we going to have time for Shia?
I want to talk Shia running rampant throughout Mardi Gras, punching holes in the wall like a loose bull. Like,
it's pretty hard to party too hard at Mardi Gras too. So
and he did it all in vain because of his hatred for Mike Piazza. He goes, I did it because I fucking hate Piazza. I mean, we didn't even, the State of the Union, they threw out Al Green, who somehow keeps winning. elections and shaking his cane. Anyway, I don't know, man. All right. Well, I think what should we be looking for this week? All Iran stuff, right? I mean, it's highly like. Then again, though, I mean, okay, like when they took Venezuela, when they took Maduro, I would have thought, okay, next week we'll be talking about the aftermath of that. And we didn't really, because there was nothing that was said really that much. You know what I mean? Like, we did talk about it, but it kind of faded into obsolescence like way too fast, given that it's only 6-7 weeks out. What do you think the odds are that like there's no more strikes and then everyone just pretends this didn't happen? Like, do you think that's on the table, or do you think this is going to be like a bomb campaign?
I think because of Israel's goals, it's going to be much more of a thing than the Venezuela thing. Because Israel's not going to accept, we just killed this one leader, let the rest of the government stay in place as it was. Like
angrier than ever, by the way.
Right.
like they're so mad. And who is pro-war? I can't believe people are pro-war. That's a crazy stance, in my opinion. Like, I love war. I want war. Who says that? Like,
I don't know, but Pete Hegseth at the bare minimum.
Yeah, dude. Send him out there. Get him.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, why? I feel like that should be. I mean, they always say, like, Jesse Ventura was in the news again going, anyone who votes for war should have to send a family member. Which, I mean, hey, good point. Maybe he's right.
Yeah.
But all right, let's call it. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
I'll talk to you later. See ya.
See ya. Alrighty, and that's our show. Thank you so much for listening today. If you liked it, give it a review or whatnot. I mean, thank you for making it to the end. I really appreciate you if you've done it. Share the show, all that stuff. But like I said off the top, if you're here and you're just like, God damn, dude, I don't want to talk about this anymore, take a break. I think we all are, you can feel bad and, get back to it eventually. But, I mean, it's depressing, dude. And it's overwhelming. So I'm right there with you, like I said off the top of the show. But hang in there. I'm not going to be motivational, but this is why it's so important, all this election stuff and voting and stuff. You don't want it to be this important because it's terrifying, but this is why, But anyway, I'll talk to you Wednesday. Take it easy, guys. Bye.